I hope I am audible, and I've been given a responsibility that I need to finish the session within 15 minutes. So I will request your leisure sharp focus. This is now being converted to fire down. And being a fire officer, I have been given a task of firefighting. Okay, so I will start with the Manu sir, and the reason is that every fire safety starts from the table of an architect, right? I think, right, sir? So, what do you see the challenges when you need to handle fire and life safety code for different states, but under a corporate, like it's the application of National Building Code as a guideline or as a implementing norms when it is referred, and local building bylaws. How you manage this task?
So, I guess from last 10 days or so, there's a lot of WhatsApp going around that there is an IAS who has passed the judgment that NBC is not a law and it's just a code or a guideline which may or may not be followed. As you rightly said, each state has its own set of fire norms, and I mean, as far as we are concerned, as architects, we follow the more stringent of the two, right? I mean, whichever is more stringent, we try and follow that code over the National Building Code, or National Building Code over the state code. Fire essentially is a state subject, so the responsibility lies on them, unless there is too much of strictness that no, you have to follow the code, which is the state code. Then it's a separate issue, but otherwise we try and follow the more stringent of the two. It's a problem even if you look at the state like Delhi. I mean, UBPL and NBBC kind of do not speak to each other in terms of requirements. The glazing widths. And UBPL is 1.5 meter as against NBC, which says 1 meter. Or same goes for the fire doors. When fire door requirements as in the code, UBPL is 2.4 meter, whereas fire is working with 2 meters as well. 1.2 meter depending on occupancy loads. So I personally go take a path which is more stringent of the two. I try and follow that.
So this is your decision. Depending on what will be the stage, it will be more better for the life safety purpose. So that is where the spirit of the code that we would like to apply. So my next question is to Avnish. How do budget constraints affect the entire prioritization of fire safety installation in a project?
So I feel that when it comes to fire and life safety, budget should be the last in the list of priorities. Well, of course, there are multiple ways that one can tackle the budget constraint with respect to the specifications, but the requirements that are laid down in the codes, the good practices for fire and life safety cannot be compromised in any fashion whatsoever. So while the budget has to be kept in mind, there are ways and means to mitigate and design efficiently with respect to the planning, positioning of services, planning of the high side spaces, planning of the shafts, and planning of the compartmentation and spoke management system hand in hand with the architects. That can make the system more optimized, which will down the line have an impact on the budget as well. But keeping budget in the forefront as the first preference with respect to design should be not there. It should be the other way around.
Do you really think that client always prefer to go the way you are telling? Is it a real scenario or this is ideal condition?
I think today, throughout the course of the session, throughout the course of the event today, we have all discussed about the importance of fire and life safety. But yes, even in 2025, we look at fire and life safety as a dead investment and something that will never really pay off. But it is like sitting on top of fire which is yet has not encountered. So I believe time is right that more and more focus is given on the safety aspect and less to the budget implications, while there are ways and means to mitigate that and bridge that gap as well.
Thanks.
I also feel that actually one doesn't need to navigate the things which are written in the code, right? I mean, it's not about the cost. I mean, especially the latest National Building Code actually is telling out the operational requirements of the hospital. So I mean, at least in the hospital, I don't see much of resistance from the promoters that you should not follow that or try and save the cost or cut corners, etc. I mean, we don't face that challenge at all.
I agree. Yeah.
Thanks. Ma'am, you have a vast experience in the audits. But you're doing so many audits pan India, always on the ground, on the trade, very character. So, ma'am, how do you assess the readiness of hospital in case of fire emergency when there is a full occupancy?
Yeah, so more than audits, let me put across something. So the way the fire and emergency plan is made in a hospital is always assuming 100% load. It is never with one or two occupants, in mind. So when we put together our plans, we make sure that, okay, you have a 14-bedded ICU, all 14 beds are occupied, so many patients are on ventilator, and so many will have to be evacuated, which is the alternate care site. How are people going to manage? That's how it is put down. Just alluding to some of the points. See, I'm managing a project now, 350 beds, a quaternary care center that's coming up. There's another medical college that's coming up, which is 500 beds. I don't think the current promoters, owners of hospitals, as rightly said, are compromising in any way on fire safety. So typically now I feel that the architects, the contractors, the PMC is overloading us also in a way that, because I know the codal requirements, sometimes it is overloaded as well. That's one. I mean, I'm not blaming them. They want to be rest assured and it's 100% safe. So things have really changed, and that's where organizations like FSAI and CABO and all have played a major role in actually bringing about that awareness, including all the emergency preparedness aspects of hospitals are kind of very well covered. But the major problem I'm seeing now is the electrical part of it. The actual, the demand, the plan that is made is not always with some amount of redundancy for future expansions. So what is happening, suddenly an FRA, a CT, something else is coming up, and the building is not planned towards all that. Then you are adding on lots and lots of components into this pre-existing structure, let's say after 2 years, 3 years. And that's actually becoming a huge problem. So I always tell the planners, you give some leeway for additional load as well to be included. But to answer to your question, certainly we plan for 100% occupancy, or at least 80% occupancy.
Thanks, ma'am. You have touched upon 2 or 3 points which is related to the retrofitting part of the building. So when the retrofitting is planned, so you need to have total assessment. What are the changes? Is it addition or alteration of the structure, and what will be the impact on the base design, whether it is within the design capacity or not. Like if you are doing any changes in the occupancy, type of occupancy may vary, your codal application will vary. So, sir, my question is to us that how do you manage these kind of changes to implement code compliant, a safer design or retrofitting in a fully functional operational building?
So that's a very good question. So the biggest challenge when we are doing a retrofit is that it is a live and functioning hospital, which cannot have any downtime. So the easiest part of retrofit, let me start with that, is the wards. Because similar to a hotel room, you can actually shut down one entire floor and do the retrofit of that. So if let's say there is a floor which has all the wards, a single bedded or a double bedded ward, you can actually shut down the entire floor or at least part of it and do the renovations. The challenge comes when it comes to the critical areas like the ICUs, the high dependency units, the OTs, the pre and post op spaces. So there, typically first it's very important to understand what the existing services are. In my experience, I've seen most of the operation theatres, and it's a very common practice that they have independent air handling units. So typically taking a shutdown of a single air handling unit and an OT is something that can be explored, and the retrofit has to be done in piecemeal. And while the operational facilities and the healthcare facilities is still operational. So I believe that certain challenges are there. Biggest challenge being mapping of the existing services, understanding the existing services, how these are being fed, what are the panels feeding to all these critical areas, which are the air handlers which are operating a certain space, whether it's being run on a VAV based system or being run with independent fan call units. So after understanding, then a retrofit plan can be created.
Retrofitting in an existing setup is a huge challenge. You rightly said that, I mean, for wards and floors, etc., it's not that big a deal. Even in case of intensive care units, probably you can mitigate it, because I'm assuming if it's a larger facility, you would have an occupancy factor which you spoke about, so you can maneuver around. But the biggest challenge is operating rooms, I mean, and it may not just be a major retrofitting, right? I mean, it could be as simple as the fact that the corridor flooring of the operating suite is worn out, right? And you want to change it. So, I mean, how the suite is planned becomes very critical. Even if you are doing a new facility, the design from an architect standpoint, I'm not talking about the services right now, is that it should allow for the labor to come in, because you do not have a downtime, you can only do it over the weekend, when you phase it out 1 or 2 OTs at a time. So how the complex is designed that it allows for the laborers to come in, it's not only about the accessibility of the people who are going to retrofit it, but it's also about the fact that even if you're using floorings like vinyl and all, which is much faster to lay, but it still requires a day for it to drying up, I mean, the healthy season when the operation theatre is underutilized are the seasons which are actually negative to change such things, and it takes much more longer time to dry up the flooring. So the route inside the suite should also be looked at very critically right at the design stage. So, yeah.
One thing I'd like to add that, just to emphasize on the challenges, I was quite fortunate to be a part of a couple of hospital upgradation projects for the Delhi government in the last term. And so 2 of the hospitals that we were designing, so there was an upcoming block, and then there were certain retrofitting spaces within the existing block. And I'll share a very, very live example that the retrofit took more time to complete than the new block that came up.
Thanks, ma'am. Because the time is very short, so there will be a rapid fire round starting from your side. Then I will give the audience opportunity to ask minimum 3 questions. I hope I do have that much time, because people are waiting for this session, so they deserve this time from my slot also. Okay, ma'am, for you. One point that you want to suggest all the people who are representing their hospital organization here, most critical area that they need to focus as far as fire safety is concerned.
Yeah, even if you have the best systems, you end up storing unwanted items. It's a huge problem. Healthcare industry is one industry where you have the maximum number of women. And women have the tendency to hold on anything and everything without discarding. So be ruthless, throw away things that are not used, stop storing items in the hospital.
Ma'am, declare Diwali every month.
Absolutely.
Now, Avnish, same question, but for you, it's one fire protection installation, be it a smoke management or a system, active fire protection system. Which one you will say that one need to focus?
I think compartmentation and smoke management is very critical, because that will effectively isolate the fire in only a certain space. The active fire protection is something that can be designed fairly straightforwardly, but the critical element is the compartmentation and the smoke management. How we can contain that fire within a certain space.
Except compartmentation, sir, what will be your next?
I still feel compartmentation.
No, sir, we have to
I'll answer your question as well. I think compartmentation is the most critical thing by all means. The thing is that even while doing compartmentation, how you are how you're positioning your fire towers within the compartments, how the refuge areas are planned. I'm talking more from the architect standpoint.
Yeah,
I'll still try and answer your
It's
question.
okay, yes.
So, how the refuge areas are planned, that's very critical. The other thing is, I feel that how the fresh air is brought into the system is also something which is very critical. I still remember, we were doing projects long back
No, sir,
where
I have to, because you understand my responsibility. The takeaway is that the compartmentation is the core where you can find that there is a handshake between architect and MEP. Both understand the importance of compartmentation, and the beauty with the compartmentation is that it is generally called passive fire protection. And what is a passive? It is never visible. Even in this room, you can see the smoke detector, sprinkler, but there will be fire sealant and stops. Those are not visible, but they are the funding of our FRS principle. Now it is open to the audience. They can ask questions, not more than 3. One hand is already raised by Raman sir. Please someone pass him person mark. Is it possible? No mic. Raman sir.